Hi, Dagobert from Dagbert's Tackle World here on the Gold Coast, and today I'm going to talk to you about, real quickly, the basics and what you need to know to how to catch wahoo. And as you all know, wahoo are species that we catch off our East Australian coastline, and actually all around the world, actually every coastline. But they're an oceanic fish. They're a speedster. They're one of the fastest fish in the ocean. They go hard, and the size can vary from little tiny ones, but generally speaking, they're about a metre, which is around about sort of 7 kilos or 8 kilo, maybe 7. And they grow up to ones over in over the side of South America up to about 80 kilos or 70 kilos. But generally speaking, around here, a good wahoo off the Gold Coast is where we are, is around about 40 kilos or 35 kilos, which is still a solid wahoo. And the average size is probably around 12 to 20 kilos. So I'm going to talk to you about the gear that I use, and then what I look for, and then how to do it. Okay, so that's the procedure. So firstly, the rods and reels where I'll start at. Now, the old TLD25 is a pretty popular reel that you could use to catch wahoo, and that's about where I'd probably start at, or in quality, that is. Obviously, you can go smaller reels like a Talika or anything that's got a bit of grunt to it. But the TLD20 or 25 is where you'd probably start at in quality. This is on an overhead to res. The rod's rated to about 150 pounds. I've only got, I've got a 100 pound wide on leader here, and my main line's 30 pound mono. Now you can troll 30 pound mono, that's like the baseline as in the lightest. 50 pound mono is quite good as well. But you can't really use 30 pound braid because at the shock, at the speed you're going to be trolling, it just snaps. Even 50 pound braid is borderlining at 12 knots of speed that you troll the lures at easy to break. So 65 pound braid I'd say is definitely okay. As I said, 50 borderlining, and 80 is going to be perfect to 100 pound braid. As I said, we're running a 100 pound wind on leader, like that fellow there, and at the end of that I'm running around about, if I find a snap here, about a size 5 or 6 snap, which is like that sort of size there. That's actually it's a bit heavier line, this one here. But yeah, so I got the snap on the end. That outfit there is a 50 wide Tiagro. That's like at the heavy end, so I wouldn't troll 80s for wahoo unless you're up north somewhere, but 50 wide's a really good size reel for big wahoo if you're chasing those sort of 20 to 30 kilo models. I've got 50 pound braid and I've got a 200 pound wind on there, but I'm using this for catching stripies and blues out wider. But that's sort of the size we're using on that sort of outfit. And then if you are short for outfits and you want to use maybe a jigging outfit or something like that, if you've got like a Saragossa sort of 10 or 20,000 size, probably 20 or 18, because you need the line capacity, folks. So this one has got, it's chocolate block, it's got 400 metres of 80 pound braid on it. And for wahoo, I would say that's suffice for chasing big wahoo. For little wahoo, it's no problems at all. That's on my heavy jig stick, but you need to have the capacities. The reason being for that is because we're trolling so fast, we're trolling our lures at about 12 knots, and we're trolling them back a fair way further than you would say an all hard body type lure, like something like that, when you troll maybe 40 metres back or 60 metres. With the wahoo skirt, we're trolling them at around about minimum of 60 to about 100, because you're doing 12 knots is a perfect speed, I believe. And you get, if you get them too close, they occasionally will get air, especially if you're going down a swell, they're going too fast, they get caught in the next swell, then they bounce out of it and sort of catapult through the air and get tangled up and whatever else, and you don't want that to happen. So you need to drop out a bit more line to keep your lure down in the water, okay, without coming out. And then when you get a hit at 12 knots, by the time you react and pull your throttle back slowly, not too fast, and don't ever pull it back to neutral, whatever you do, but drop it back to say 1 or 2 knots or 3 knots, you're going to drop another 100 metres in that 4 or 5 second period, maybe even 120 or 150. So then you got 200 plus metres out, and if you've got 300 metres of braid and the fish becomes a bit bigger than normal, yeah, you're getting down to the nitty gritty fine end of the spool. So as I said, my suggestion is at least 300 metres of braid or mono, whatever you're doing. Why is 30-pound mono stronger than 50-pound braid? Because of the stretch. It has stretch. And when the fish are hitting that speed, the stretch, and it all works well, and that's the way it is. So, just the way it is. So, I just want to show you something else as the lures. So that's the gear. My lures I'm trolling. I do occasionally troll hard bodies for Wahoo, but they need to be able to handle at least 8 to 10, if not 12 knots of speed. And remember, these things have got diving bibs on them, so you want something that's, they do say these two gauges are actually 12 knots, believe it or not, but you want something preferably a little bit smaller bib, which we have thousands of downstairs in our showroom, and something that can handle 10 or 12 knots or even 14 knots when you're going down the swells perhaps. So it needs to be not too crazy, because if you're doing 12 knots and you get a massive big bib on the front, it's actually going to bend that right over so much it'll probably pop your line, or it'll come shooting up the top and do big somersaults and hook up all the rods that are at the back of the boat, all the lines, sorry. So choose your lures carefully and make sure it's a brand that's reputable to be able to troll at least 10 knots or 8 knots. The next thing is skirter lures. Now, there's a difference in skirter lures too. You can't really use your marlin lures, so to speak, for trolling for Wahoo at 12 knots. You will catch Wahoo trolling at 6 to 7 knots for marlin. Yeah, they will take that speed, don't worry. But their aggression turn-on speed is around 10 or 12 knots. Okay, so when you're trolling a concaved head in a normal type skirter lure, and then generally very light in the head as well, it gets so much air at that speed, it again throws the lure out of water and it doesn't perform at all. So you need to do two things. You need to go to a lure that's got like a conical type head on it like that. Yeah, same sort of thing. Like that type of thing there, that can handle 12 or 14 knots without even thinking about it. If you can use some of the slant eye heads like that one there, but this thing's as heavy as, this was 3 times heavier than a normal skirter lure. So it'll hang in there at that speed. That colour's also very good Wahoo colour too, by the way. But the optimum one to use is something in this style here, which is like a metal head, right size, good size hook. It's got I think about we rig them up to about 200 pound, 285 pound wire. Right through, single hook. 2 hooks are very dangerous in this situation, so I like to use single hooks. But the thing is, they do have a concave head on them. Let's pop this out and I'll show you. As you can see there. But the beauty of it is, it has a jet head. Can you see those holes around there? So what happens is the water's pushed in there and this little lure all of a sudden becomes about 6 times the size of what it looks like there. So the bubbles coming through here at 12 knots will come flying out those little vents, and it'll make the front look probably about that long, and those bubbles will go through the water for at least probably 50 or 60 centimetres, like 3 times the distance of that. So it looks a lot bigger than what it actually is. And the Wahoo will just come in and just pounce it. I say for Wahoo, there's never too small, there's never too big. I've caught them on all lures. I've caught them on metal heads, like 20 kilo, 25 kilo fish, half the size of that. And I've caught them on ones that are, you know, the heads is half the size of that box before you get to the skirt. So they take an array of lures, but the thing is to stick with heads that are heavy, preferably pointed or jet heads that can handle the speed. And colour-wise, yeah, look, I love purples and blacks and that sort of colour. They're sort of my favourite colours. I also do like bright colours at times, like pinks and blues are really good. That sort of colour there are really good. And I have not tried the Brad J type of colour, which is that sort of colour there. I haven't tried it yet on the Wahoo, but I will. And I've definitely caught them on Lumos. Standard Lumo always works, as we all know. But that's sort of like my pick of, say, 6 colours that I really like. But purple's in the top 3 of those 6 colours. Purple black, purple silver, purple pink. They're all good. Okay, next thing we need to do. So we've got our gear ready, we've got our lures all rigged up. I make the traces quite short, okay? My traces are only about like 500 mil long. And there's a couple of reasons for that. And the main reason for that is, as you can see that there, it's not too long. The main reason for that is that when you're trolling along and there's a big wahoo, maybe they're in school, and the wahoo comes honing in on your lure and his mate's right next to him, if he's going to aggressively attack that, his mate's not going to attack the ruckus and the air bubbles from the swivel on that end there. When it's that close to there, generally they stick away a bit. But if you had that a metre up or 1.5 metres up the line, and there's another ruckus of bubbles and that coming off the snap swivel at 12 knots up there, and he's seen his mate grab something here and he's obviously feeding, the other guy's going to go straight up there and grab that snap swivel. And over the years, a lot of our customers that had their the swivels bitten off, and including myself back in the day before I realised to shorten your traces down a lot shorter. Sometimes they even run them only that long. It's just a bite trace, but you've got to remember a wahoo has a very long snout. So a Spanish mackerel, say 15 kilos, from his eye to his tip of his nose is probably only about that long. But a wahoo is probably about that long. So it's quite long. So you've got to always remember, if the hook's on that side of him in the mouth, you need to have enough wire to go around that side. If he's running, swimming that way away from you, it can't bite you off. If it's too short and he's swimming that way, he's going to bite you straight off. So you need to have a little bit of length there, but at the same time, not too long, otherwise his mate's going to bite you off when you're trolling. So they're very aggressive on biting off everything, okay? So you just need to get it right. And I generally say 300 to 500 mil litres enough for your leader. So we've got our lures all sorted out, we've got our snap swivels, we've got our rods, we've got our line. Next thing, before we drop the lures into the water, we've got to check the drags. So depending on which rod you got, of course, if you're using an egg bit, it's probably the hardest one because you don't have any lever drags on there or anything to set it. So my suggestion is either use a set of scales, or if you do a lot of fishing, you'll know that right feeling in the drag, which is about where it is there now. So I'm grabbing it, it's pulling it out, it's quite tight. I know at 12 knots it's not going to pull drag off, it's going to be just borderlining every now and then when I'm going down a swell at 12 knots, so at quite speed. I'm up on the plane, remember, on my boat. Every now and then you might just hear a little bit like that, which is just the lure just pulling a little bit of line off, but it's not going to be continuously going out. So that is the right amount of drag you want. If you got it too tight and it hits at 12 knots, it's probably going to snap your line or snap somewhere. It's just too tight. And if it's too loose, you're just going to get a massive tangle at that end and run out of line really quick, because it'll be swimming very fast away in the opposite direction generally. So yeah, get it right on your drag, okay? And then we've got all our gear done. The only other thing you need is a good set of pliers to get the hook out of the mouth. Wahoo has very dangerous teeth, and a good donger, preferably an aluminium one that's maybe filled with sand, so there's a bit of weight to it, or a wooden donger, which are both very good. And that's about all you need. Obviously, just a chill bag or an esky or something you can fit a 1.5 metre wahoo into. And once you've got all that down pat, you're ready to rock and roll and go and work out where you're going to go fishing for the day, which is our next thing we're going to do. So I've got a little diagram here just to show you what sort of to look for. So with wahoo, they tend to sit in on the edge of current lines, they sit in current changes, they sit around where bait is obviously, and they love a fad area, or if you find something floating in the water that's full of dolphin fish, there will be wahoo swimming around with it as well, and sometimes a massive school of massive size. That's like the honey hole, if you ever get the luck of finding that, which I've only done twice in my life. Just something floating random in the water, full of wahoo and dolphin fish. That is just so good. They just all scream off together, and they're all big fish. But generally speaking, you're going over the top of a reef and trying to find bait on the reef, and they'll be stacked up like Spanish mackerel do in layers above the reef. So in this scenario here, we're in 60 metres deep, the reef's in about 40 to 50 metres, there's bait all over it, and there's fish stacked up, wahoo stacked up mid-water over here, and at the top over here. These guys here, even this guy right down here that's 30 metres down, will come hooting up and grab your lure that's only subsurface by about a metre at the most, or half a metre. they'll see it and it's different. And even the boat will be already attractant for them. And when they see the lures, they'll hit it hard. That's the good thing about trolling that speed. When you get your lures back about 80 metres, it's pretty clear water back there, and they'll be able to see it very easy. Okay, but the reason why I like purple the most is you tend to do a lot more bobbles when you're going fast and slow, and the bubbles are white water, and the silhouette of the purple against the white is very easy for them to see the lure. Sometimes a white lure or a green lure can get a bit lost in the in amongst the bubbles. In saying that too, if you're running 3 lures, run your 2 darkest colours in closest, which is still going to be 60 and 80 metres, and your 100 metre one will be the green or a white or the pink, whatever colour it may be. So we found this bait and these fish stacked up here. So I've drawn, that's the sound, this is the plotter, and that's a 500 metre radius there. So you're talking like about 1.5 k's up to here and about 1.2 k's that way. And I've marked on here where I've caught fish before. So that's obviously the northern edge, and the current here always runs from north to south. So that's the pressure point in the reef, and that's where a lot of bait sits, and that's where the mackerel or the wahoo go up and down patrolling the area. And I'll be along that edge there. The red dots is where I've actually caught fish. So that's like bait, little pinnacles on the main reef itself. This is the reef, this area here. That's probably, just imagine it's sitting about 20 metres below the surface, and around here is 50 metres deep, right? And that's where I've probably got my biggest fish, is that area there. And not much at the bottom end here, because that's where that's the opposite end to the pressure point, so it's a bit quieter. It's generally the calmer area sometimes, but we're not going to catch many fish there. So when I do my trolling here, I'm placing my lures out. I've got 3 lures. I'm going to place them at 60, 80, and 100 metres, round about. And I'm going to get my speed up to about 12 knots, but I'm going to trim my boat, depending on the sea. Obviously, if it's rough, you need to keep the nose up a little bit, otherwise you're going to get too wet, and it's just too hard. So you need to get that trim just as low down as you can get it without getting too wet in your boat. Depends how big your boat is, and depends on the shape of it and many aspects. But if it's a flat, calm, glass out day, I'm going to trim that boat down fairway like as much as I can get it, because I'll plane quicker. I'll use probably a bit less fuel at 12 knots, and I've just got the happy medium thing happening with not too much white water behind me, right? And I drop my lures out, and I'll probably come down here first, drop my lures out, and I'm going to do a run up along this edge here, and that edge there might be at that top of that area there. Okay, and then it drops off at the top end up here, and hopefully I've got a strike somewhere in this area here. I'm so sure I've got my big one, maybe the last trip before. And when I hook up, okay, I will, sometimes you get a double hook up, but generally I will straight away pull back to, if you hear your ratchet going, obviously, make sure your ratchet's on too, guys, otherwise I'll empty your spool in no time. And with this egg beater, you'll hear, especially if you've got braid on it, you'll hear it, okay, over the motors. If you're in a fly bridge, you need to have someone downstairs watching the rods all the time. And what happens is the ratchet scream off, you grab the throttle, try and always, hopefully it's when you're with the wind. When you're going against the wind, it's a bit of a pain. You've got to sort of turn, before you even pull the throttle back, turn side onto the wind, so the wind's going to turn you around and the line will come behind you. You don't want to keep going into the wind and slow down, because that it just doesn't work. Your boat will end up overtaking the line, and it'll just be a big crap fight. So always go side onto the wind a little bit, and then the wind will take the boat in the right direction, and you'll fight the fish behind you. So yeah, but hopefully it hits you when you're going with the wind. Anyhow, so I pulled the boat back to around 2 to 3 knots, and I'm comfortable with that, and I'm now making ground on the fish. The problem we have these days, guys, particularly off our coastline here of Queensland, is sharks. And sharks love to eat pelagics, wahoo, dolphin fish, mackerel, whatever, it doesn't matter. So we need to try and get it in as quick as we can, but wahoo have a tendency to have a very big first run and strip a fair bit of line off, so you've got to try and get back 200 metres of line. They will do another one close to the boat, and then they pretty give up a bit quickly. I believe Spanish mackerel will fight better than wahoo in the longevity of the fight, but wahoo definitely do a better run at the start or second run. So finally got it in close to the boat's just nudging forward with the wind, or just going forward into the current, or with the current if there's no wind. And if you've got hydraulic steering, obviously it'll keep going the right way. If you don't, you might be in a bit of trouble. But whatever you do not pull it back to neutral until right at the end maybe, but I still don't. Even when I'm gaffing the fish, I'm maybe doing just 1 knot, but I'm still in gear. If you've only got you in the boat, you don't have time to clear the other lines. You've got to try and fight the fish away from the lines if you can. Okay, and if you're fishing, if you've got 100 metres out and you're fishing in 40 metres deep, please remember these do sink really quick. If you keep it going at 3 knots, that's all like 3 knots rather than 1 knot, I find it keeps them up off the bottom. But if I go any slower, they will maybe sink down and get caught on the bottom, which you don't want it to do. If you've got 2 guys in the boat, the other guy can wind the lines in while you're fighting the fish. It's all a team effort, but please remember they sink and they get caught up on the bottom, and it's happened many times with many fishermen, including myself over the years, until you learn to get it right. Because your line's not out, generally it's out further than the depth that you're fishing in some of these areas. When you fish out in the blue yonder, in 80 metres plus, you're right, it doesn't matter, you can stop the boat, or you don't ever stop the boat, but you slow it right down. So just remember that factor. Okay, you've got the fish, you find it paid it close to the boat, boat's slowly going forward. General procedure is you try and lead the fish into the side of the boat. If you've got the gaff man, the guy's going to gaff it for you, you need to step up towards the front of the boat as much as you can and let him get behind you closer to the transom, and he might grab the leader, which I'm using a 100-pound wind-on leader there, and grab the leader and bring the fish forward and gaff it in the head at the same time. Remember, they've got a big long snout with very, very sharp teeth. You need to get it in the boat as quick as you can, obviously, but be very careful of those teeth, and be careful it doesn't fall off the gaff hook, as that becomes dangerous. If you can keep it on the gaff hook, you need to hit him out of his misery, and then when it's all cooled down, then get the hooks out. Or you get the other 2 lines back in the water, and the other guy can get the hooks out and then drop the 3rd line out later. Because it's all about time. Time is the essence, as we all know. There's a bite period for all fish, and when those wahoo are on, your bite period may only be for like an hour or half hour. So, and you've just spent 15 minutes getting that fish in, you don't have much time left to get the rest of the bite period. So you need to keep active during that time. Don't sit there and take all the photos and da-da-da. Unless you're happy with just 1 fish, that's cool. Take lots of photos. But if you're on a bit of a mission to get a couple of fish or whatever, go hard as you can in that quick time period while they're on the bite. I find wahoo bite period really good for me, especially on reefs like that, is generally on low tide, last hour of the run out, first hour of the run in. The general bite rule for all fishing though is about 2 hours after high tide is a really good bite period. So 2 hours into the run out tide. At that period, start of that 2 hours, into the 2 hours, sorry. So you then have a 6-hour window between low and high, and so tide runs out for 6 hours, right? Into the start of the 3rd hour is when they're going to bite really hard for an hour or hour and a half. And then by the end of the 4th hour of the run out, they'll slow down a little bit. Then you'll get another bite just before the low, and as I said in the first, the run in. That's your 2nd bite. Okay. Obviously, you can tee that up early morning, late afternoon. That's perfect as well. So you get your mackerel in, put them on ice, and keep them well. Slit the throat. Always cut the gills or the throat, and bleed them if you can. Wahoo have a tendency of being too long for most eskies. Some people will cut them in half. My suggestion, definitely, I use the chill bags. I've got 3 bags of ice in there. They're 1.5 metres long, and they'll take most of your wahoo. You can bend them up if they're 1.7 or something. Wishful thinking. But yeah, they'll generally fit most of your wahoo into the bag. I think that's about all I really need to get you guys, just to get to the basics to get started to catch wahoo. Areas to fish, if you're fishing off the Gold Coast here, we have some really good reefs a long way though, 70 k's from the Seaway North, called Sevens Reef, which is off Point Lookout. That's a really good reef for wahoo. The best time of the year by far is sort of around now, March, April, May, to the sort of mid to end of May, depending on the water temperature. It needs to be sort of 22 or 23 plus. 25, 26 is the ultimate temperature for us down here. The other reef down the south way is the 9 Mile Reef, which is off Tweed Heads. I've caught many big wahoo down there. and low tide is my favourite spot time there. Also down a bit further at Windara Banks, which is halfway between Tweed and Brunswick Heads, is a really good spot as well. Quite a big area to fish. And you'll get them on the 24,000 reef, the Diamond Reef area, which is where they're getting at the moment, which is off Southport in that sort of 40 to 50 metre line. And a lot of guys are trolling for mackerel, but if you're getting bitten off, switch straight to your Wahoo lures and start trolling faster. So your mackerel, you're trolling 6 to 7 knots, but I just lost 2 of my hard bodies to mackerel, to Wahoo, sorry. Okay, time payback. So I rip all my other hard bodies in, and I rig up with the skirts of wire, and I drop them a bit further, and I go a bit faster. And if there's Wahoo there, they'll just smash it, because that makes them even more excited than the hard body. The other thing for Wahoo is you always get them out around the fads, as I was saying. They're in the area, or you'll get them out randomly when you're out wide fishing for blue marlin and blacks and stuff like that. And always keep an eye out, like I said, for anything floating in the water, because there's the honey pot if you can find it. It's probably about all I have to tell you about the Wahoo. So get out there, enjoy it. Remember, trim your boat down right, try and get as flat as you can, depending on the weather, and set your drags right, and make sure your hooks are sharp, and be careful of those teeth, and good luck out there. It's Dougie Burt from Doug Burt's Tackle World. I hope you enjoyed tonight, and we'll see you another time. Good luck out there. Thank you. Bye-bye.